Welcome, everybody. So thank you so much for joining this Morpheus monthly webinar. Today's webinar is focused on the Morpheus ServiceNow integration and is titled Morpheus ServiceNow Integration, the Full Scoop. So we really want to give you the full scoop around the integration between Morpheus and ServiceNow and how it helps many of our joint customers as a result. Okay, so again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Most of this session will be demonstration, so please hang tight as we get through just a handful of slides, and then we'll jump into the demonstration very quickly because there's a number of use cases that we'd like to cover as a result. So my name is Hicham Mourad, but the screen that you're looking at, this is my coworker, Anish Abraham. Anish is out of the UK. He's near the Manchester area, avid soccer player and fan. And he's been in the industry for a very long time. He's part of the delivery services, so the professional services at Morpheus Data. He's been in the industry, again, as I mentioned, for a very long time. He's worked for banks, he's worked for pharma, so he has a wealth of knowledge and expertise. And he's done a lot of work with ServiceNow as well. So he's sort of my go-to ServiceNow guru that I reach out to. So Anish, thank you so much for being here and helping out with this webinar. So Anish is going to help jump in, add color where possible, and he's also going to be helping us with the Q&A as well. So remember, we have a Q&A button at the bottom, so please feel free to leverage that Q&A as we're going through. And you can see how to connect here with Anish. This is me. My name is Hicham Mourad, and you can see I spell my first name phonetically just because you can imagine nobody ever, mispronounces it, right? So that's why it's there. I've also been in the industry for a long time. Most recently, 10 years at VMware, just left VMware in January and joined the Morpheus Data team here as the Director of Technical Marketing. I've been around the block. You can see some of the company names there. And if you'd like to connect with me, you can see how you can connect with me on LinkedIn and or Twitter. But I've presented a lot of different conferences, events, over the years. So, we may have crossed paths at some point. So, but again, thank you for taking the time to be here. So today's session is going to be focused on the Morpheus ServiceNow integration, right? The idea is that we have joint customers that have ServiceNow, but also have the Morpheus platform to do automated orchestration and provisioning across a multi-cloud environment, right? But they still want to be able to take advantage of a number of different use cases that ServiceNow helps them with. And so how do we make that happen? What are the things that we can do? And so we're going to spend, as I mentioned, most of the time actually on the demo. So just a handful of slides. We're just going to jump in the demo. So we'll give a 2-slide overview. Morpheus, just for if there's anybody here that has not heard of Morpheus and what we do. And then we're going to jump in and touch on the 4 different use cases that we have for this integration. And we're going to jump into the demo and demo actually each of these integrations, but also take a step back and actually show you how we set it up. So we'll show you what the integration looks like, and then we'll show you how we set it up to make that happen. Okay. Now, one thing I'd like to mention is I always like to mention sort of next month's session. So next month's session is going to be a technical overview around the Morpheus platform. So, think about this. If yourself would like to come back for a full Morpheus technical overview, or if you have any coworkers or peers or just friends that you'd like them to learn more about the Morpheus platform, please send them our way, www.morpheusdata.com/events, and they can already sign up for next month's webinar. All right, so quick overview again, right? This is what customers' environments looks like today. Pretty much every customer you talk to, their environments are complicated. And what I mean by that is just there's a lot of things going on, a lot of solutions in place, a lot of different technologies that they want to use, right? So you have your on-prem, infrastructure, and then there's a lot of supporting adjacent technologies that make that happen to provide that private cloud experience, right? And then a lot of customers are also looking at public cloud and dabbling with different public clouds, right? Every customer we talk to is using at least 1, possibly 2 different public clouds, right? Now, what this causes, this screen here causes is just a lot of manual handoff between different people, right? I mean, I have one customer that it used to take them, 8 weeks from request of an application or a workload for them to actually finally receive it. Because of all these manual handoffs between these different groups, right? Hey, I need to talk to the monitoring department. I need to talk to the networking department. I got to talk to storage, right? I need to get, somebody from the, the DNS and the DNS team and to give me the DNS entries. And like, there's so much going on. So it takes a long time. So what we do essentially is we really break down those barriers, break down those silos, and bring everything together without any vendor lock-in, right? So we can actually take advantage and integrate with all these different technologies that you're seeing on the screen here. We'll touch a little bit more about integration, but we bring all this together, even modern day applications using Kubernetes and containers as well. So one of the great things about Morpheus is that we support bare metal, virtualization platforms, and we don't care what virtualization platform you're using, we support it, and modern applications, Docker, Kubernetes, different flavors of Kubernetes as well, can be onboarded and managed through the Morpheus platform. Now, but today we're going to focus again on the ServiceNow integration piece. So if you want more details on some of those other things, please come back next month because I'll have a ton more detail on those integrations, and we'll go in and demonstrate a lot of them. So at a high level, Morpheus, what we do is we enable a systematic approach to multi-cloud management. Your private cloud, you got public cloud, right? You got workloads in different places, you have adjacent technologies. How do you bring it all together? So what we want to do essentially, and the core of what we do, is providing a speedy, agile environment using on-demand self-service for both your private and public cloud. So for your entire hybrid IT, if you will. This is what we do. This is our core of what we do. And we do that by providing also, governance and all these other things that I'm just going to touch on here momentarily. Now, how do we make it happen? The first thing is we essentially integrate and optimize and bring in your existing environment. So you have brownfield environments. You're already dabbling with AWS or Azure or GCP and have one or two virtualization technologies and maybe KVM and OpenShift and AKS, EKS, whatever the case may be. We integrate and discover. So we create cloud accounts, we discover that environment, and if you choose to, you can onboard and bring under management any of those discovered environments. And then we can start to do things like right sizing, give you some consolidated reporting, some costing analytics as well around that, give you a really good view of what you have in your environment, right? The other thing that's really important is governance, right? This is one of the challenges that customers, have today. Hey, I got somebody that needs to use AWS, but what do I do? Do I give them access to AWS, right? Do I give them access to GCP? Do I give them access to this VMware environment or this Nutanix environment? Or do I give them access through governance where they're able to access those environments and provision to those environments without actually having, access to those environments, right? And this is where we come in with our fine-grained role-based access control and multi-tenancy, as well as the lifecycle management and policies that goes around that to provide that secure environment. Next is all about automation. So we have our workflow engine, which allows you to do a ton of automation, including, integrating things like CI/CD, Jenkins, etc. Right? We want to foster that DevOps type culture. So we want to make sure that we can support all those folks. And if you want to use things like infrastructure as code, right? You want to have like Kubernetes manifests in your blueprints. You want to have Helm. You want to have, Terraform blueprints. We support it all, folks. So we have that. We can eat our Azure ARM templates as well. Boom, all part of the technology. So you can have that as part of our default set of blueprints. Great. And as I mentioned, bare metal, virtualization platforms, and modern applications, containerized applications in Kubernetes. And lastly, once you have all this set up, you have to be able to manage it ongoing, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to integrate into like scaling solutions, into load balancing solutions, into monitoring and logging solutions, your backup products, as well as your DR products. We're going to actually integrate into that, and that can become part of your provisioning workflows as well, right? In addition to that, providing owners of the applications day 2 actions. So every owner of an application can do whatever they need to for their applications. Excellent. So now, what am I going to cover here? Okay, so I'm going to cover the prerequisites to basically turn on the Morpheus ServiceNow integration. There's just a few things you need to be aware of, nothing crazy here, right? And then I want to touch on these 4 use cases, which I'm going to mention right now. So the first use case is CMDB integration, right? So when you think of ServiceNow, right, it's CMDB, right? That's sort of the heart and soul of what ServiceNow does. And then there's a lot of adjacent capabilities, obviously. Morpheus, we're a provisioning and orchestration engine across multi-cloud, right? So, but what customers want is they want all those things that we provision, all the services, regardless of what cloud we're provisioning in. They want CMDB records. They want those CMDB records to constantly be updated, right? So as we're doing all this work in Morpheus, so that's the first use case, create those CIs in the Now platform in the CMDB. So you're going to notice I'll probably jump between the Now platform, ServiceNow, just habit. So forgive me for that, but they're one and the same, right? The Now platform, or if I say ServiceNow. Approvals integration. That's another thing, right? We actually do approvals, right, in Morpheus, right? So upon provisioning, you can say, hey, yeah, I need, Jack to actually, approve this, right, before it goes to provisioning or starts a provisioning process. We have built-in approvals, but a lot of customers say, hey, we have ServiceNow. We got like a ton of workflows in here, and we want to leverage our approval workflows. So that's the second use case, which will show you how we use it, but also how to set it up. Okay, so we'll touch on that. That's the second use case. The third use case is incident management, right? So again, ServiceNow, part of what it does is ITSM, right? So IT service management, incident management and response. So a lot of our customers say, great, you can do incident management in Morpheus, but you know what? I want you to send those incidents over here to ServiceNow because I want to be able to see them. My ServiceNow administrators need to be able to see them. So we can actually send, the incidents, open those incidents in ServiceNow, as well as update the activity on those incidents, including potentially closing or resolving those incidents in ServiceNow. So that's the third use case, right? Another use case that we often see is a common use case around, hey, great, Morpheus can do some really cool stuff. It has a really cool UI for me to do provisioning from, right, from your service catalog. But I want to actually trigger from ServiceNow. Can I do that? And the answer is yes. We actually have a Morpheus plugin for ServiceNow that you would download from the ServiceNow store. You install that, a little bit of setup that's required there. And then we can actually present Morpheus catalog items in ServiceNow. So the users don't even have to log in to Morpheus or come to the Morpheus UI. They can just basically order what they need and what their, excuse me, what their administrator has granted them in ServiceNow, in the ServiceNow service catalog. So we'll show that as well. So again, when I get to the demo here, which is going to be starting in just a few moments, what I want to do is I want to show you each of these use cases. And then while we're waiting on provisioning, or while we're waiting on the approval, or while we're waiting on the incident to open and update, right? What I'll do is I'll take a step back and say, hey, here's how we set this up, right? So I want to really unfold all that for you to make it really easy for you to go ahead and set this up yourself. Okay, so let's just jump right in. So prerequisites, what are the few things that you need to know, okay? Once you install the Morpheus appliance, just make sure you have a valid certificate, right? That's just going to be important for that, bidirectional communication between the Morpheus appliance that you have, as well as the ServiceNow instance that you have, okay? That's all. Just make sure you have a valid certificate. Everything's good. A couple of things that you need to do. On the Morpheus appliance, one of the things that you need to do is actually set up a service account that you'll be logging into ServiceNow and vice versa. So those two, bullet number 2 and 3 there essentially are, I need a ServiceNow account that the Morpheus appliance will be able to authenticate to, right? So that's like a, I call it a service account. And then on the Morpheus side, I also need a service account that the ServiceNow plugin will authenticate to into Morpheus, okay? That one is only needed if you're doing use case number 4, which is you want to present Morpheus catalog items in ServiceNow. So you have to set up the plugin, and you have to have the plugin authenticate into Morpheus, right? So you'll have to have the service account in Morpheus that the plugin will authenticate into. Again, that one's only needed for the ServiceNow plugin. Okay, and then once you have that sort of, you make sure you have a valid certificate, you've created the ServiceNow account, you've created the Morpheus account because you want to set up the ServiceNow plugin, the first thing you're going to start with is creating the integration record. We'll walk through that here in just a moment. And once you set up the integration record, then you can start to turn on the different use cases, which we'll touch on here momentarily. Just to give you a quick look of what each of these use cases looks like, if you will. CMDB integration, anything that we trigger in Morpheus, any provisioning that happens in Morpheus, whether it's done from the Morpheus Service Catalog, whether it's done from the ServiceNow Service Catalog. Once Morpheus has done the provisioning of it, we'll update the CMDB with all the CI information. Boom, this is what it's going to look like, okay? We'll see that. That's the first use case, essentially. The other use case, which we're going to actually see before even the CMDB one, is the approvals, right? So again, you can use Morpheus approvals or you can use ServiceNow approvals. We want to use the ServiceNow approvals. So what will happen is, again, regardless of whether I'm triggering or ordering an application or a service, if you will, from the Morpheus UI or from the ServiceNow UI, once that triggers in Morpheus, it'll say, hey, I'm waiting for approval here. And then somebody in ServiceNow has to approve it before we'll move on. Cool, so that's what it's going to look like. And you'll see that here again in real time. Next is around incident management. Okay, so one of the great things that Morpheus does is that it will actually monitor the health of the applications. And as a matter of fact, if monitoring is turned on, we will automatically create health checks for the different services. So for example, if you provision a database, we know there's a database there. So what we'll do is we'll have a health check that's checking to make sure that database is live. So if something happens, something fails on that database, boom, we'll create an incident in Morpheus. But because of this integration, we'll create that incident also in ServiceNow. So we'll send that over to ServiceNow. And you'll see that in ServiceNow saying, hey, it's created from Morpheus. So we'll be able to show you that. Now, one of the things that we do also is we can update the activity. We can resolve it. So if the ticket closes or the incident closes, we'll actually resolve it. So what we'll do is we'll simulate breaking a machine here shortly, and then we'll show you how, one, it degrades the health, and the Morpheus health check says, hey, I got a problem with this application. Boom, I'm going to go ahead and open an incident and open an incident in ServiceNow. So we'll get to see that, and we'll see how that even resolves as well, as long as everything cooperates. Now, the last use case is the Morpheus plugin, as I mentioned, right? So again, you can see here, all you have to do is go to the ServiceNow store. You'll do a quick search on Morpheus, and that's what I did up here in the little screenshot on the top right. You'll see the Morpheus plugin, right? So the Morpheus ServiceNow plugin. You'll log in with your high credentials, and you'll basically, install that. And what you'll then be able to do is on that integration record that we've created, you'll now come back and basically say, hey, I want to share these catalog items. I want to share these blueprint items with ServiceNow, and then voila, they'll show up now in ServiceNow. So this bottom screen here, what you're looking at is ServiceNow. Obviously, you can see from the menu on the left, and I can see all these different exposed library and blueprints that my administrator has set up for me. Great. Now, there are a few things that we need to be aware of, right? So we do have to go in and lock some of the fields, especially for blueprints. I'm going to show you both of those experiences, whether I'm provisioning a service or whether I'm provisioning an application blueprint, I'm going to show you the different experience. One is like where you give more capabilities for the person provisioning to select, hey, I want this size, I want that size, I want to, you know, put it on this network versus that network, right? So you can do that. Or you can say, hey, I want to keep it simple. They don't need to select everything. I'm going to pre-select everything for them. All they do is provide the name of the application, right? And that's where we have to go in and lock those fields and set that up. And yeah, I'm going to show you that live. So a couple of mandatory things, we'll touch more on those in just a few moments. Now, I usually have this sort of a little bit later after the demo. I just wanted to point it out here because usually when I get into the demo, I kind of like, you know, go crazy and I start, you know, going through all this stuff, and sometimes I run out of time. So I wanted to point out that there's a great white paper that we just wrote, me and Anish actually, around the Morpheus ServiceNow integration. Covers all these use cases, including the setup, everything you need to do, highlighted in there. And we created a quick 6-minute video to highlight all these integrations. So after this webinar, if you don't want to come back and watch the webinar again or something like that, you can just go and watch a 6-minute video highlighting all these 4 use cases, each one of them, and how they work. Okay, so just kind of make note of that. All right, live demonstration. So that wasn't too bad, right? Just a few minutes, 20 minutes in here, right? So we're good. The rest of the time is all demo. And please, if you have any questions, please ask the questions, because Anish here is going to be helping with Q&A. He's also going to be jumping in as well as we're walking through the demonstration. So let me just stop sharing PowerPoint and let me share the demo here. So just give me 1 second. Here we go. Just let me know that you can see that okay, Anish, please, if you don't mind. I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, that's yes.
All right. Okay, thanks, man. Okay, so here we are, right? So we're in Morpheus. So remember, the first step I said is, you know, you have those service accounts created. You make sure you have a valid certificate for your Morpheus environment, right? Your Morpheus instance, regardless of whether it's a single node and you have an HA cluster. It doesn't matter your different, you know, architecture or your deployment model, if you will, that you just have a valid certificate. And then the first thing to do is we go to administration, and then we go to integrations, and then we have to set up the integration. So the first thing I'll do is I'll click on new integration. I will scroll down and I will find ServiceNow here in the list. So I'll select ServiceNow. I'll go ahead and provide a name. I'll provide my ServiceNow instance, and I'll put in my service account name in here, okay? Then I can actually do some custom field mapping. So if there's a custom field, for example, that I want to populate in ServiceNow, we have a custom field mapping that I can do. I'm going to show you that in just a second. And then lastly is, hey, this is the default table in ServiceNow that we're going to populate. If you have a custom table, or if you want us to populate a different table, just provide the table name in here in this field. Okay, cool. Really easy. No coding, nothing, right? So that's really all there is to it. So let me show you what that looks like. I give it a name. I say, yes, I want to enable this. Here's my vendor instance, my service account on the ServiceNow side. I just called it Morpheus to keep it simple. And in my case, hey, you know what? There's a field in ServiceNow called object ID, which I want to populate with a Morpheus variable called instance name, just to show something what this looks like. This is just JSON format here, right? And if I did want to have a separate database that I wanted to populate, I would just provide the name. But we populate this table by default. Okay, so this is the default instance table. Cool? That's all there is to it. So as soon as I've done that, we are essentially good to go. However, there's a couple of things that we need to set up for CMDB, for approvals, for incident management. I'm going to touch on each one of those as I jump into the demo. So now let's go over here. Okay, so I'm just going to go to provisioning and instance. And you know what? Here I am. I'm an end user consumer. You guys have given me access to this. I need to provision a service. Okay, so here's my self-service catalog. There's a ton of stuff in here that you guys have given me access to. I'm just going to select here active in queue, first one on the list, keep it simple. Right, so I'm going to click on next. And you know what? Here, I have access to a number of different groups. But what would happen is, you know what, let's say my group is ServiceNow. This is what I'm going to show you because this is where I have the approvals and the CMDB and everything turned on. So I'm part of that group. So the ServiceNow group limits the number of clouds that I can provision to. So I only have access in here to provision to AWS, Azure, and my VMware cluster. Cool. I'm just going to deploy to VMware for now. My administrator has a naming policy here in place, right? So, and that's hard coded, so I can't change that, right? But you know what? I'm just going to click on next and we'll get to the instance. And you can see here, okay, this is the version. There's different versions I can deploy. You know what? I can do this as a container, as a Docker container, or I can do it as a VM. You know, I keep it simple, just go with a VM. I like a little bit more memory than that. Okay, oops, not 12 gig, maybe 1 gig. There we go. And you know what? Let's select my resource pool demo. And again, you can hard code all of these. So you don't have to, select these. So these can all be hard coded if you choose to do that, right? But I'm going to go ahead and actually just click on this. Really cool stuff, integrating, backups and replication and lifecycle management, bringing in things like Ansible, Puppet Chef, running all that cool stuff in here. Awesome. We don't need to go into details on that. That's for next month. And then here I can see my service that I'm provisioning. I can see how much it's costing me every month. And I'm going to click on complete. Voila. So, okay, so I actually provisioned this or requested this from Morpheus. Okay. So now I'm just going to go down here. I'm just going to say ServiceNow. Look at this. It actually provisioned and it's in a pending status right now. And as you can see here, right, it says it's waiting approval. And you know what? The request number is this guy over here. Okay, I'm just going to grab that request number really quickly. So nothing's going to happen. This is going to sit here because somebody on the ServiceNow has to go ahead and approve that for it to get created and then to update the CMDB. So let me jump over here to ServiceNow, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over here since I just copied the request number, or did I? There we go. Let me just grab that. Keep it simple. All right, so we'll go here. Here's a request number. Voila, the request number itself is approved. But one of the things that I have to do is request the item in the cart, right? The item in the cart is essentially that. So a couple of things I can do here. Usually you would see it in here, the requested item. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select that. And I'm just going to go in here and say closed complete. That's the equivalent of saying, hey, this is now approved. For those who are more elaborate in ServiceNow, the workflow where I was just looking at, you could have just had it there. You can just right click and approve, right? So I'm just going to click on update. And now that I clicked on update over here, so again, the request is approved. I just approved the request item, close complete. That means it's approved. And if I go back over here, and if we just give this a second, one of the things we're going to see is that this is going to start to go ahead from pending over to provisioning. It'll just take a second, right? Because we checked, oh, look at that. It happened right before our eyes. There you go. Usually we check, I think it's like every minute. So, I mean, the worst case scenario could be like 60 seconds, the best case scenario could be like 2 seconds, 1 second, whatever the case may be. But, so it just takes a minute, which we constantly check for those approvals from ServiceNow, and then we just trigger this. Beautiful. So this thing is actually provisioning now, 4 minutes, I'll have my service, everything is good. Okay, so 2 things here that are happening. One is the provisioning is happening. We saw the approval. So we have to figure out, hey, how did that approval take place? And then also one of the things that we're going to show is the CMDB and how is that CMDB piece taking place. So while this is provisioning, let me now go ahead and show you what I had to do just to make that happen. Okay. So first of all, under administration, I'm going to go back here to policies. Okay. And there's a whole whack of different type of policies, but I'm just going to go down and show you the provisioning approval policy. So you can see here I have one called, approval workflow. If I go ahead and actually edit this policy, you'll see here that, okay, this is my demo lab. It's my ServiceNow approval policy. It's enabled. All I had to do to add this was specify, hey, do I want the Morpheus approvals or do I want the ServiceNow approvals? And I just said, hey, ServiceNow approvals. That's what I want to use, right? And then we select the workflow in ServiceNow. So everything you're seeing in this list here, we're reading from ServiceNow. So like ServiceNow has all these different workflows and any custom workflows that you may have, right? So in a customer environment, typically if we're doing a POC, we would just use something like this. We would use sort of the default service catalog request. That's sort of the default ServiceNow workflow. We would use that. So we have one here called Morpheus Instance Approval. So we select that. And then I'm scoping it. Because I don't want because we actually use this environment for demos, me and the SCs and everybody. So there's a lot of people that use it. I don't want everything to have to go through ServiceNow approvals because not everybody has access to our ServiceNow instance. So I'm actually limiting it to a specific business group, if you will. And that business group is called ServiceNow, right? And that's why when I provisioned, to that business group ServiceNow so I can actually show you this. That's it. That's all I had to do to turn on the approval. Nothing else. Once I have the integration record, which I showed you earlier, I do this, voila, that takes care of the approval. That's all there is to it, okay? Now, let's go ahead and just jump back to instances. Let's see if that instance is, complete. Okay, so it's close. It's close. It's not quite there, but it's close. This is the one that we've done, active MQ. Okay, so it's getting there. Slowly but surely, another couple of minutes. Now, what will happen next is the CMDB record will get created. Since this is taking a little bit of time, let me show you how to turn that integration on. Okay, usually I like to show you what it looks like and then come back and show what that integration or what we had to do to make it happen. Because this is just taking its sweet time here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we turn that on. So I'm going to go to infrastructure groups. And again, think of these groups as your business groups, if you will. You're going to assign, different people, group access, cloud access through the role-based access controls, right? So you're going to have tenant roles for multi-tenancy, and you're going to have user roles for the user. So you're going to go in and assign that. So in my case, it's ServiceNow, right? So again, ServiceNow approval and CMDB integration. It has access to 3 clouds, which we saw, AWS, Azure, and VMware. And right now we have 2 instances, which we just saw on that list there, right? So if I click on that business group, so I can see everything that's discovered, all the clouds, all the information, but really all I want to show you is how we turned the CMDB integration on. And all it was is once I create that group, all I had to do is come over here and it'll say, please select. And all I had to do was say, hey, for CMDB, use ServiceNow, right? And so because this is my integration record that I had created earlier, I just have to simply select that in the list, and that's all there is to it. Guys, if I want to use DNS to generate DNS records, right? Boom, I just need to do that. You know what I mean? If I want to take advantage of things like, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, right? Boom, hey, here's my Ansible tower or my Ansible dev environment or my Chef environment. Select that. That's all there is to it. And now I can actually take advantage of those playbooks, those manifests, those recipes as part of my provisioning process, right? Really easy to set up. It's just literally like, again, you're seeing here, there's no coding or anything magical, right? We've done all the hard work for you. You just got to select it and you're good to go. Okay, so that's it. That's all I had to do to get Morpheus to send over the CI information over there, right? So if we go back here now, and I just jump back to ServiceNow, we should be close. So you can see here, yeah, you see the HM, my initials, right? Because again, my naming policy, this is now complete, right? So you can see it's ready, it's powered on, it's all good, right? So I have like all these day 2 actions I can do, right? I have all this information about this thing, right? And I have also, additional information that I can go ahead and look at on this instance. I can get to the console, I can look at the history, really cool stuff, even logging, right? Out of the box logging, we're able to see this. But now the important thing is, hey, you know what? Just remember this 1025 number here. Let me jump over here. Let me jump back into the configuration all. So I've actually kind of highlighted these as my favorites, just to keep it simple, right? And so as you can see here, very top one right now, hey, 8:35 a.m., that's Pacific time. And you can see here, it just got created, right? Just a minute or 2 ago. And I'll click on it. And now you can see all the CI information. So here's the CMDB record. Here's all the CI information. You can see the name, the IP address, right? It's installed, right? Updated by Morpheus, the time. Here's the provisioning information on it, right? Again, the fully qualified domain name, all this information is here, including memory, CPU, the size in gigabytes, the disks, etc. Now, the great thing about this is if I go ahead and actually make any modifications, so I'm the owner of that application on the Morpheus side, I go ahead now and make changes. I add some CPU, I add some memory, I add a second instance to this service. It's all going to get updated and created in here on the ServiceNow side. Awesome, right? So far we've showed 2 things, right? So we've showed the approvals, which is really straightforward. We've also showed the CMDB piece. Now, one of the things I want to show also is the incident management piece. How do we show that, right? So one of the things I typically do is you can see this thing is healthy right now. Everything is good. And remember, I mentioned to you that we automatically create these health checks. So on every instance, if there's a service, if there's an application, if there's a database, if there's something on there that we can actually discover, we actually create these health checks. And you can see this thing is checking, successful 200, it's, checked 2 minutes ago. So one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit this. Oh yeah, we check this every 5 minutes by default. I'm going to change it to 1 minute. And it's actually checking on the local host and it's checking on port 8161. So I'm just going to add a 0 to the end. That's all, right? Essentially breaking that application, right? So I'm just kind of simulating, us breaking something. So I've saved it, and let me just double check that I did. Yep, so it's down to 1 minute. We're doing a web check on that service, on that port. Okay, I've changed the port number, so now what's going to happen? Hey, it's not going to find that. It's not going to work on that port number. So in a moment here, we won't see green. What will happen, we'll come back and we'll see red. Okay, so what will happen is we will generate an incident in Morpheus. Now, since we're just waiting on that as well, so the way I like to do this is when we're waiting on something to happen, I can go back and show you how we set this up. Okay, so first of all, like I said, we automatically generate checks and groups of checks. If you deploy like a multi-machine application and there's different services, we can actually group checks for you for those different applications. So we can start monitor things as a holistic application, right? So we can do that, right? Or we can do these individual checks like we can do on different individual instances. Here's the one that we just provisioned. It's still showing green. Don't worry, it'll turn to red here in just a moment. And lastly, what will happen is when that happens, we will actually generate these incidents, right? So we'll actually open the incident. So we'll see one here momentarily that will get opened. And once it opens in here, it'll send it over to the other side. So the thing I just wanted to show you is we can do incident management inside of Morpheus, but a lot of our ServiceNow customers want it there, or other ITSM service customers want it in those solutions, which we can do as well. And then we can actually generate alert rules based on these, and alert people by Slack, PagerDuty, all those other fancy tools if you want to, and using webhooks, all really cool stuff. Okay, now how did we turn this piece on? Okay, so in order to turn that piece on, what we do is we go to administration, and we go to monitoring, okay? Now, by default, monitoring, Morpheus is doing the default monitoring. This is, the auto create checks, as I mentioned. We look for services, known services, and we're going to create these automatic checks for them. That's how it knew we can do a web check on that 8161 port. Boom, it did it automatically. But if I scroll down here, right? Hey, by the way, I can tie into things like, APM, right? App Dynamics, New Relic as well. So I can take advantage of that monitoring data and actually be able to consume that and leverage that here. But for the ServiceNow incident management integration, all I had to do was come over here and say, hey, I want to enable this for ServiceNow. And then from my drop-down list, I select my ServiceNow instance. Now, you see here, some customers have multiple ServiceNow instances. So the answer is yes. You can have multiple ServiceNow cloud accounts in here for integrations, and you can tie in, different instances as well, right? And you can associate different instances to different groups for approvals, etc., right? So you have the ability to do that. So here we just have to specify the ServiceNow instance. And I'm just saying, hey, if a new incident happens, just go ahead and create the new incident in ServiceNow, right? And by the way, if we close an incident, right, because the health of that, application, it's come back, somebody resolved it, right? Hey, go ahead and also resolve that incident in ServiceNow. And then we're just going to go with the default severity levels, if you will, here. And that's it. You turn it on, provide that, and click on apply. By the way, for here, if you don't want to close or resolve the incident, you can just say, hey, add the activity. That's all I want you to do, right? Or take no action, right? So you can do that. I just want to say resolve the incident. Okay, so let's just go back over here. We'll go back to monitoring. Let's go back to incidents. We should now have that incidents here. So you can see now the incidents, the incident is here. It's opened. It's been open for 2 minutes. And what does that mean? So if I go over here to ServiceNow and I go to incidents, and you can see, if I just go here, created, you know what? Sometimes you got to filter on all to see them. There it is. So here it is, new Morpheus incident on that guy right there. It just opened, a minute or two ago. I can click on that incident and I can see, hey, the caller is Morpheus user, and the impact is high, right? The state is new, and here are some of the activities on that incident. Really quickly, let's just go back here, right? And if we go back to the checks, let's go back and edit this guy. That's not the right one. Let me just make sure I hit the right one here. Let's go back over here. Let me just jump into that specific health check. I just want to make sure I edit the right one. So I'm going to get rid of the 0, essentially fixing the problem or the health issue per se. We had it flagged as critical. That's why it showed as, high. So I'm just going to save that really quickly, double check that I got rid of that. And then eventually we'll come back and we'll just go back eventually. And then what will happen is on this instance, okay, what will happen, this will go back to green. It'll go back to informational first because we have to do 3 checks before it'll go back to fully green because we want to make sure, right, that the problem is resolved. It'll go back to green. And then what will happen is it will end up updating, this incident here, okay? And then what we'll see next is this guy's going to get resolved. This will show here resolved. It'll have some additional activity up here, just kind of saying, hey, yeah, the problem's resolved, all good, blah, blah, blah. But again, you have the Morpheus links and all the information. Excellent, right? All cool. Any questions, Anish? Anybody, anything you'd like to add? Any Q&A that's coming up?
No, I think we covered most of the integrations that we do. And I had 4 questions, answered them.
Okay.
So all good.
Excellent. Thank you, Anish. Hey, at any point in time you want to jump in, please do so, okay?
Yeah, sure. You're doing good.
All right. Give me a chance to grab some water here. Awesome. So this will update. We'll come back and look at it. We're going to come back into here. Now, the next use case, as I mentioned, hey, you know what? A lot of customers don't want to come over here to provisioning instances and apps and, you know, and provision from here. They want like their users to be able to do this from ServiceNow. Okay, and this is that fourth use case. Now, for that fourth use case, again, what you have to do is you have to go over to the ServiceNow store, right? You'll type Morpheus. You will find the Morpheus plugin. You're going to go ahead and install that. When you click on that, it'll say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I want to grab it. Hey, log in with your high credentials. You log in with your high credentials. You get it. You install it. Good to go, right? We have all the information here for you. Perfect. Now what happens is you're going to end up seeing an application here in ServiceNow. Come on, I did click on it. Come on, come on. What's going on? Ah, there we go. Okay. So once you install it, you'll basically just go ahead and search in the all applications list. You'll do a search on Morpheus, you'll find it, and then you basically flag it as your favorite, and then it shows up in here, right? So really simple to set up. All I got to do is fill in these three fields. I got to point to my Morpheus environment. Again, remember, you have to have a valid certificate for this to work. And then you specify the service account on the Morpheus side. So again, to keep it simple, I called this one ServiceNow, I called the other one Morpheus. Provide the ServiceNow, or sorry, the service account name, I provide the password. Now, there's one more thing you have to do is if you want to do this with a mid server, right? If you're doing this with a mid server, basically what you'll do is you'll open the ServiceNow Studio, you'll select the Morpheus application, right? So actually, let me just show you that just in case some of you are not familiar with that. So I'll just go back here and I will type Studio. As soon as that comes up, I'll click on it. You'll see the different applications that you have installed. You'll select Morpheus Catalog. It'll open this guy up, and then all I have to do is scroll to the bottom, and then under the outbound integration, so for the REST here, I basically just have to go into these entries and say, hey, use the mid server. Okay, we're looking to actually make that easier, so you only have to do it once versus going in and doing it for each of these. But all I have to do is select like Morpheus app, and then if I did have a mid server here, I would select these different REST methods, right? And then so, for example, I'd select post, and here in the middle, roughly, there'll be like a mid server entry, just like this one. This is application type. It'll say mid server. You'll basically click that drop down, and you'll select your mid server. That's it, right? So I just have to go in and do that once for each of these things here in the REST. Again, we're trying to simplify that, so you just do it once on the main page over here, and then it's all done. Now, this basically creates that, again, that bi-directional integration now, and then this allows us to now start to export and expose what clouds we want to expose to ServiceNow, as well as expose what instance types or services, if you will, and what application blueprints we want to provide. Okay, so going back to the Morpheus side, remember the integration piece is just under integrations. I'll just scroll down. Here's my integration. I'll open it up, right? So first thing I showed you is this guy, right? How did we do that initial setup? That's the initial integration record. But now that we have that and we've installed that plugin on the ServiceNow side, now I can actually share instances and blueprints. Instances are services. Hey, like a MySQL instance, and that could be 1 or 5, right? You know, it could be an Nginx service. It could be, you know, an Apache service. It could be a Tomcat, you know, service. That's what essentially what we mean by instances, right? Blueprints are essentially, you think of blueprints as multi-tier, multi-cloud applications. Okay, so I have the ability to basically present to my ServiceNow user instances as well as blueprints. But the first thing I have to do is say, hey, what clouds do I want to allow those guys on the ServiceNow side to see? And so on the ServiceNow side, if somebody's provisioning from over there, you know what? I want to allow them to provision to AWS. I want to allow Azure. I want to allow Nutanix Cluster 2 specifically. And I want to allow my VMware cluster. How simple is it to add? Boom, just click on add. You decide the group, hey, a ServiceNow group, and these are the clouds. right? And then you just simply add it. Done, right? That's it, right? And what we see here is what's essentially provided within that group, right? So I don't have to expose them all. Like I could have essentially just had AWS added and come over here and now added VMware, demo cluster, right? So I can do that. So again, that's all there is to it, to expose the cloud. Next is, hey, you know what? I've exposed all these different, I have some Apache, CentOS, DynamoDB, right? Ubuntu. So I've exposed these, and these are, I can provision, like this one's AWS, this one's Azure, right? These ones are to Nutanix, right? This one's obviously Azure, DynamoDB. This one's VMware. So again, very simple. Here's my library. Again, I can see that entire service catalog for all my instances. I select what I want to provide. Next, boom, add it to the library. Within a couple of minutes, it'll actually be available on the ServiceNow side, okay? Now, I can also share blueprints, okay? So to share blueprints, it's just a matter of saying, hey, here's a blueprint, and I want to share it. But just before I go do that, let me actually provision something from ServiceNow, which is what I probably should have done, and then we'll come back and take a look at how that happens here. Okay, so let me go back here. Let me go to my favorites. Let me go to the service catalog. So once I install this, I actually now have a Morpheus application, right? So you simply have to add that here to my home page, right? So it's really easy. You just click on plus. You can see the applications that are installed here, right? So I'll click on Morpheus and I say, hey, I want to add it here. It's already added, right? So it's right here. So I'll just click on it and voila, I can see all those things that we just looked at. Now let me show you that experience, right? So blueprint, okay. Hey, you know what? For the sake of time, Anish, I'm going to have you do me a favor here, right? So I'm actually going to provision these. Since we showed approvals already, I just want you to go ahead and approve them while I continue talking to them, right? So you'll approve this and the AWS instance I'll provision next. So I'm just going to say, you know what? From SN, so from the Now platform, this is a CMS app. I'm just going to put HM CMS 01, okay? Cool. And look at this. That's all I had to do. Just provide the name. Boom. I'm just going to say order now. Boom. Done. That's it. It'll come up. It'll give me the request number. It'll still show the request number on the Morpheus side, just like we did for the other instance we provisioned, right? But for the sake of time, I'm just going to ask Anish to also just go ahead and approve that for me, so we see that going on the Morpheus side. And you know what? I'm just going to go back again to the catalog, and what I want to do is I'd like to actually provision something else. You know what? How about we provision, just something simple like, hey, you know what? Apache. So again, I'm just going to call it, say from SN, Ubuntu, AWS. Right now, you notice this one has a bunch of fields, right? Some of them are mandatory. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment, okay? So what group? Yeah, I'm in the ServiceNow group, cool. Hey, what clouds? Well, it's the AWS, so that's the cloud for this specific instance, right? Hey, what do I want to, the sizing? So my administrator is giving me the ability to select what t-shirt size I want here. You know what, I don't want to go that big, so I want to go a smaller size. This size, let's just say 20, right? I can choose the Amazon zone if I want to. I can keep that blank because it's not mandatory. We'll just go and default to something. So here I'm just going to go, hey, throw it on the default. You know what, I don't need to skip the agent install for now because I really just want it to go ahead and assign an EIP. I just want it to go ahead and provision quickly so you guys can actually see it. This is my VPC, right? Resource pool equivalent to VPC. And you know what? I'm just going to put it on public 1A. Done. That's it. So what I just showed you is two different experiences, right? One experience where you as an administrator give your ServiceNow users the ability to choose and select if they want to, or if you want to keep it simple for them and just give them that sort of that shopping cart experience, you just go in and basically pre-select everything for them in the blueprint, okay? So Anish is actually just approving these for me in the background, right? So he's just approving them, again, just for the sake of time, right? We're just gonna do it that way. So if I actually go over here to apps, I provisioned the application first. So you can see here the status on it. It's still showing as, waiting for approval. Remember, once he's approved it, it's going to take a minute or so. You can see that this is an application. So the application has multiple things here, multiple instances as part of it. It has 2 VMs, right? It has a MySQL backend, and it has a Tomcat app server. So these will start to provision here in just a moment, okay? And, Anish is going to double check the request number here, 701 for me, Anish, if you don't mind just double checking that.
Yep,
okay,
701, I'm just approving it now.
Okay, perfect. So that's that. And then on the instances side, I also just, provisioned another one. And so he's going to be double checking. That's this guy here, the Ubuntu instance. This is 703. So 701, 703, those are the request numbers, Anish, if you don't mind just double checking those. And then we'll come back and we'll see these provisioning here momentarily. Now, what I wanted to show in the last couple of minutes we have is one of those requirements. So on the blueprint, remember I said, again, if you want them to be able to select whatever they want, right, just give them an instance. So they can go in and select. That's if you're comfortable with your users choosing and what they want, right? You can go in and do that. And by the way, you can still limit like the sizes and all that. So you still have the ability to do that by creating your own custom instance types, right? That's something you can do in Morpheus. But if you do end up wanting to give them an application and really providing that easy, simple ordering, like a real shopping cart, click, give it a name, boom, next, and then somebody just has to approve it and we're done. Then what you need to do is you need to go into the blueprint, and once you select, what environment you can deploy these to. So this one here, for example, is specific. I've done it VMware, but you can see here, I've locked these fields. Okay, so the only thing you as an administrator have to do is in the instance info section and in the configuration options section, in these two sections, you have to come in and pre-select those fields and just hit the lock button. So you notice they're locked. That's why my users don't have anything to choose. I've pre-selected what they're going to get, okay? Now, the thing about this blueprint here, this one I called it VMware on purpose, but I can easily make this a multi-blueprint, a multi-cloud blueprint by just me going, you know what, ServiceNow, I want this one to go to, another one to go to AWS, and you know what, I want it to be a part of my production environment. The other thing you have to do is all 3 fields here, you have to select, right? So all I have to do is click on Add Config, and then I would do the same under MySQL, right? So an AWS equivalent. And then voila, I've made this a multi-cloud blueprint that I can also provision from ServiceNow. But what I would do is, again, all I have to do is go in and select all these, lock these guys in, right? And you know what? And then just go ahead and save it. And now, again, my user on the ServiceNow side can now deploy this blueprint and they can deploy it to AWS, as long as I do that another one here under the MySQL side as well. Cool? That's all there is to it, right? So that's all there is to it. So I'm just gonna go back here to applications, and why hasn't this kicked off, Anish? The demo gods aren't happy.
the 5 minute, it's a 5 minute sync time. So I think it's, okay. I just approved it, so.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Let's just take a quick look at the instance. So guys, you can trust me, this actually does in fact approve and go. And actually I did provision one last night, which I should have left there just to kind of show you guys, but these will come in and they'll just start provisioning here. It usually just takes them, a couple of minutes, and then these will provision and they'll start. But you can see the name already on my application, right? So if I go to apps, right, you can see here from SN, HM, CMS01. That's the name I just entered. Oh, look at that. It's provisioning. Look at that. It started already, right? So again, it just takes a minute or two, right? And you see it. So now the application is provisioning the actual instances, right? So in that, so the MySQL tier, the Tomcat tier, they're both provisioning here. Everything is good. Okay. So we'll just keep it at that. Let me just go back and stop sharing. Let me just really quickly, I'll just share my entire screen for simplicity here. Go back to the deck And so we covered the live demo, right? We ran a little tight on time at the end. We're just a little bit over time. Guys, go download the community edition of Morpheus. Just go sign up here. morpheusdata.com/community edition. It'll give you a page. You'll sign into our Morpheus hub. You'll be able to request the community edition. You can go ahead. It's a little bit limited in the sense that you can only do like 3 clouds and 25 instances. But hey, it gives you something to actually, get your hands on. And you can still use it to actually integrate with something like a ServiceNow if you want to. And if you want your own one-on-one dedicated demo, just go to morpheusdata.com/demo and we'd be happy to set you up with one of our system engineers, and we can actually get more, into a deeper dive demo. And we have a lot of great resources on our site. So lastly, if you do have any comments, yeah, this was good, yeah, this was awful, throw it in the comments, throw it in the chat if you like. But Anish and I both want to thank you so much for taking the time. I know there's a ton of different webinars that are happening out there. I feel like so many people have what I call webinar fatigue these days because we're on webinars all day long. But I just wanted to sincerely thank you all for taking the time. I hope you guys enjoyed being here. We loved having you here, and we really look forward to hopefully seeing you again at the next webinar. So thank you so much. And guys, stay safe and stay healthy. All right, thank you again and have a wonderful day.